everybody, my name is Kailie. Obviously, I'm not a familiar face on this channel, but just to give a brief introduction about myself, I'm a 20-year-old student from California and I'm studying finance. I'm in my third year, which means, I guess in the US, we have a 4-year program, so I graduate in 2021 from university. Today, I wanted to talk a bit about basics of investing, and something that I think is really unique about finance and investing is that it is really applicable to everyone within their lives. Something I find really cool about investing is that anyone can do it, but I think the advantage that we have, as I'm assuming most of us are pretty young that are watching this, and we have a lot of time to build our investments, so I think it's great to start learning about it earlier. I think information like this is something that should be available to everybody and that we should all be actively learning about, just because it really holds great power in financial freedom and things like that. So I guess I'm just going to be talking about a brief introduction to the basic concepts of investing. So just as a disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. I am not here to give any investment advice whatsoever. I am not qualified to do that by any means. So take all of this information as you will. I mean, I'm talking about pretty basic concepts, so nothing here is going to be too crazy, but I just wanted to get that out there just to make sure. I guess to start, I should probably define what asset means. And I guess layman's terms, an asset is, according to Google, a useful or valuable thing, person, or quality. So in terms of finance, I would say an asset is something that is either tangible or intangible and will create value for the company in the future. And that is a pretty baseline definition of an asset. Now, in terms of investing, the goal of purchasing an asset is for you to purchase it and for it to appreciate in value in the future. That's the general baseline of what the goal of investing is. You want to put your cash somewhere and you want it to grow. So I'm just gonna briefly break down the asset classes. So there are real assets and then there are financial assets. So real assets are things like real estate, land, property, and also the one intangible real asset is intellectual property. Then we're gonna go into financial assets, which are the types of assets like equity, fixed income, and derivative investments. So what are these three things? What are equities? What is fixed income? And what are derivatives? So derivatives are a little bit more complicated, and I'm not going to be talking about those today, but those include things like options, futures. So that's all I'm going to say about derivatives. Those are a little bit more complicated and something I haven't completely grasped the concept of, but I will go into equities and fixed income today. Just to get it out of the way, equity is a fancy word for stocks, in essence, and fixed income is a fancy word for bonds. So when people are referring to equities, they're referring to stocks, and when people are referring to fixed income, they're mostly referring to bonds. So I'm first going to break down the basic information of equities. So like I said, equity is just a fancy word for stock in essence. So there are a couple different types of stock, but baseline type of stock is common stock, and that's what we would go and purchase for ourselves. Also, another type of stock called preferred stock, but that is a little bit separate. So for the purposes of today's video, when I refer to stock, I'm referring to common stock. So how do people make money from investing in stocks? It's pretty simple. It boils down to mainly two things. One way people can make money from investing in stock is that the value of the stock is appreciating. So it's going up. Often you hear the term buy low, sell high, meaning that you purchase the stock for a low price and then you sell it when it appreciates at a higher price. So you make that difference. So you may ask, how does this price of a stock appreciate or go up? And a lot of that is determined on the performance of the company. Real life events directly affect the value of a stock. For example, I don't know if you guys were aware of this happening, but there was I think it was a podcast or a video of Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, smoking weed. And you might think, okay, what does that have to do with Tesla? When this happened, Tesla's stock price actually dropped significantly. And that is because people's view on Elon Musk drastically decreased. People were less confident in him as a founder. They found it a little bit irresponsible. So people started selling their Tesla stock. And when people sell stock, it causes the stock's price to plummet down even further. So it's kind of like a feedback loop in a sense, where it just keeps going and it feeds off of itself. So that's where stocks can get a little bit dangerous. But the point of this is to say that the simplest things that happen in somebody's personal life, for example, like Jeff Bezos or things like that, these events are super important to pay attention to when you're investing in stock, because it directly impacts the price of a stock. It impacts how people view the company. It impacts how confident people are in the company. In essence, a stock's price at any given time is what people perceive it to be and what any given person's opinion of the company is. That was the first way. The second way to make money through a stock is through a dividend. So dividends are typically distributed 4 times a year, once every quarter. So effectively what a dividend is the company is taking its profits, and part of those profits are going individually to each of its investors. But the caveat here is that investors are at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of priority. So that effectively means that investors in stock of the company are at the bottom of the list and are the last to get paid. So above them lies the bondholders, and generally bondholders have higher priority in getting paid out. Then comes preferred stockholders, like I mentioned before. Those are the special people. Then comes general stockholders, so they get whatever's left. Something that is commonly said is that stockholders have a residual claim. Effectively, what that is that they get whatever's left. So they get the profits after everybody else in the company has been paid off. So it goes bondholders, preferred, then common in terms of who gets paid out. So that is essentially what equities are. It's just stock. So next I'm going to transition into fixed income, which in other words are bonds. Just to kind of break down how bonds work, I'm going to give a little bit of a scenario here. So let's say person A, we're going to name him Andrew. So Andrew gets loaned money from person B, which we're going to call Ben for today. So in this instance, person A, Andrew, is the borrower of money, and person B, Ben, is the lender of money. And you might think, all right, so what's in it for the both of them? Person A, Andrew, gets that money up front because Ben lent it to him. Ben was like, all right, I'm going to give you this money, but what's in it for me? Why should I be trusting you with this money? And Andrew says, well, I'm going to borrow this money for now, but I'm going to pay this back to you plus a little extra at a time in the future. So Ben says, all right, I get a little bit extra money. I might have to wait a little bit for it, but I'm going to get more money than I started off with. So he goes ahead and gives that money to Andrew. So effectively, what the motivation in this transaction was parallels what happens in the bond market. Obviously, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's kind of baseline what goes on. So people who purchase bonds are actively seeking out that little extra money that Andrew was giving to Ben. And in the bond world, that little extra money is called a yield. Lenders in a bond scenario are the people that purchase the bond. So they are providing that upfront cash to the borrower. And in this instance, the borrower would be a government entity or a corporation. So the what's in it for me aspect of this is that the lenders, aka the purchasers of the bond, like you or me, the benefit for us is that we get a little bit extra money than we started out with. And the benefit for the person that is getting our money, so like the company or government or whatever, is that they get that cash to use at that current moment. Their responsibility is to give us back that cash for the future, plus a little bit extra so that we'll go ahead and carry out the transaction for them. That little bit of extra money is how people make money through bonds. There are different types of bonds that distribute their payments a little bit differently, but the main way that people make money through bonds is through interest payments, and those are typically paid out semi-annually or twice a year. The interest is predetermined predetermined when you purchase the bond, but those payments can vary depending on what the price of the bond is at any given time. So bondholders get paid through those interest payments, which are paid out semi-annually. So like I mentioned before, bondholders get paid before stockholders. That's essentially why bonds are seen as more of a safe haven, because there is a higher priority in payment. Yeah, so that was kind of my breakdown of basic asset classes like equities and fixed income. I know it is a bit of a complicated thing to understand, and I'm hoping that my explanation maybe helped a little bit. Of course, I don't know everything. I'm still a student. I'm still learning. I haven't done a bazillion trillion transactions in the stock market by any means, but I've spent quite a bit of time learning, talking about these things, so I hope that this helped. I hope you enjoyed my video for today, and thank you so much for watching.